right? Sometimes we're isolated from one another because we want to be isolated from one another for reasons that I think are not good, generally. So, there's a longing to be together, which sometimes meets resistance even internally. There's a part of us that does not want to be known, because if somebody knows me, they can call me. They'll know what to call me on. I think that this is a unique problem in this moment in our culture's life. Some of you will know the work of Robert, a sociologist at Harvard, recently out with a book called American Grace, which has lots of very interesting things to say, but one of his earlier books was called Bowling Alone, in which he talks about the loss of what is called social capital, sort of a web of relationships in our society that are strong enough to be able to support kinds of efforts that we might want to do. And he talks about the loss of that, and this is the demise of clubs, the Kiwanis, Rotary, all of that, declining membership. He takes, it's Bowling Alone because he talks about bowling leagues, which apparently are largely disappearing because people aren't gathering in bowling teams. And I think a part of what is going on in that is that we are losing our skill of forming communities together. Right? That's a certain set of skills. I was reading recently, you no doubt regularly read stuff about social media, about internet ways of connecting with one another, and there's all kinds of wonderful things about that, but the downside is that those ways of connecting are disembodied, right? And when we encounter one another in embodied form, there's all sorts of stuff that's a part of that isn't a part of just you meet my avatar online. Me face-to-face, that's a whole different ball of wax. And my avatar is wonderful. If any of you want to meet my avatar, much better than I am. But it's actually me who's here, right? And that needs to be the case. So we're in a situation in which there's a longing to do this together, but also a cultural context in which we may be less skilled than we might need to be to really carry this off, so we have to learn. And we can do that. But we need to know that we may need to learn some things in order to meet the longing that is in us because of who we are and who God created us to be. Now, I do want to note, right, for us Presbyterians in governing bodies, there is a business agenda is a way in which we relate to one another, right? We build a kind of community around items of business to be checked off, and if you're me, you've got your pen in hand and are marking them off, and as the business proceeds, I try to decide, is this item of business far enough gone that I can finally check it off? Or not? Business agendas do provide a form of relationship. I know of presbyteries that have been held together by business agendas and sessions. But they don't provide fullness of relationship. They are deeply impersonal. So we have relationship, but it fails to meet the deep longing. There's the problem. There's the longing. And then there's the promise. And the promise is we can do something about this. So I was, 3-4 years into my pastorate with Springville and Lynn Grove Presbyterian churches. They're in eastern Iowa, and things had gone swimmingly, and there was a nice sort of honeymoon period, and there was the glow of things beginning, and then there was not. This is the way pastoral leadership goes, I think, both for teaching elders and for ruling elders. You know, you have the moments when things go wonderfully and moments when things get really hard. And my own experience was that I was feeling very isolated where I was because I was isolated. And I was out there trying to do it on my own. And I was grateful that there was someone in my life who, in a very gentle way, could come alongside me and say, yes, Barry, I hear that you are feeling very isolated, and yes, the reason you're feeling isolated is because you are isolated. I can confirm that for you. Sometimes we need people to confirm just the basic facts of the situation. So I had those pieces in hand, and then the person helped me see the obvious by saying, you know, you could do something about this. Which that was about my reaction as well. I thought, whoa, light bulb, I could do something myself. I have some agency. I have some power in this situation. I am not powerless. And I think all too often, when we get locked into that situation, you know, where you're isolated and your head is down and you feel like, what, there's the one psalm that talks about, the psalmist says, it feels like horses have been running over my head. You get to feeling like that and you can no longer see the obvious, which is, you can do something about this. And in fact, you might find the Holy Spirit helping you to do that. And that, I think, is a piece of what your flipping your presbytery and forming companies of elders is about. To say to folks, I hear that longing in you. You can do something about it. We're going to help you to make that happen. So, to tell the story of how this played out in one congregation, Chip will do that, and particularly for one of the helps is daily prayer. And Chip can talk to you about what happens when that gets grabbed hold of by a congregation. You good? Good.
Thank you, Barry.
Peace be with you.
And also with you.
When I started the Office of Theology and Worship, just small, so there's a window. There's an office over here. It has a window to death because it looks into the bureaucracy. There's an office over here. It has a window to life and looks out into the world. And per Barry's sermon this morning, of course, both of us started with windows to death. And I was glad to call Joe Small up after I was in the pastorate for a year, and I said, Joe, you know, those 2 dirty secrets about the pastor, I got to tell you this, I've been praying more than I've ever prayed in my life as a pastor. I see that black Tahoe pull up, and I said, dear God, don't let that be John again, please. You pastors know what I'm talking about, right? Or you see Karen walk through the door, and you say, oh, I want to pray for Karen's mom, and Karen's son Wyatt, and she walks in and goes, I've been praying for you, Karen. Yeah. All of these things can be addressed, actually, with what I'm fixing to talk about. One thing I want to talk about a personal story about daily prayer, then a communal story, and then kind of stretch that out to the presbytery and larger groups of folk. I grew up in a Presbyterian lineage and legacy of the pastorate. However, my father converted to Roman Catholicism, and when I was in college, he gave me a brie or breviary, tomato, and gave me a prayer book for the Benedictine tradition. It's a pretty complicated prayer book, and he taught me how to use it. And I began using it, and one Lent I decided I would pray all the offices of the day. There's 7. And I'd get up at noon. And I feel like I had to make up all the prayers. And I called my dad and we talked about it. He said, no. And so let this be, this is a huge relief to me, and let it be a lesson about the way we approach daily prayer. Daily prayer happens. It's a stream that is happening now, as we speak. You don't make up daily prayer because someone's already prayed on your behalf, and it's been done. You step into the stream, and you participate. And when you don't participate, be assured that someone is praying for you. It's happening, and it's happening all over the world.